Dr. Alan Ward was a visionary, a genius. He stood at the forefront of genetic engineering, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. His playground was the Apex Research Facility, a gleaming testament to scientific progress nestled near the bustling heart of New York City. Within its sterile walls, Ward and his team sought to rewrite the language of life itself. His ambition knew no bounds, fueled by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and a desire to leave his mark on the world. Ward's colleagues both admired and feared him. His brilliance was undeniable, matched only by his unwavering determination. He possessed a singular focus, often to the exclusion of all else. Some whispered that he had grown too distant from the ethical considerations of his work, too enamored with the allure of the unknown. But Ward dismissed their concerns. He believed his research held the key to solving some of humanity's most pressing challenges. He would not be deterred. He pressed on, driven by the conviction that the ends justified the means. Ward's current obsession was the Genesis Project, an audacious attempt to create a completely novel life form. He envisioned a being of immense strength and resilience, capable of withstanding the harshest environments. It was a dream that captivated his imagination, consuming his thoughts day and night. The potential benefits, he argued, were limitless. Imagine, he would say, a creature that could repair damaged ecosystems, withstand radiation, or even explore the depths of space. But deep down, Ward harbored a more primal motivation. He yearned to prove his mastery over nature, to sculpt life itself in his own image. The Genesis Project was a tapestry woven from strands of DNA, painstakingly collected from the hardiest creatures on Earth. Ward's team worked tirelessly, splicing and recombining genetic material, searching for the perfect combination. Their laboratory became a crucible, where the building blocks of life were reshuffled and rearranged. Each experiment brought them closer to their goal, but each failure also carried the weight of potential catastrophe. The creature they were creating, codenamed Titan, was designed to be a marvel of genetic engineering. It would possess the regenerative abilities of a starfish, the strength of a rhinoceros, and the adaptability of a cockroach. But as the project progressed, Ward became increasingly secretive, isolating himself and his team from the outside world. He feared that others would exploit his work, twisting his creations for their own nefarious purposes. He justified his secrecy by claiming it was necessary to protect his work and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. However, in reality, Ward's fear of failure was also a powerful motivator. He couldn't bear the thought of his creation, his legacy, being dismissed as a monstrous mistake. The day disaster struck began like any other at Apex. Scientists hurried through sterile corridors, the air thick with the hum of machinery, but beneath the veneer of normalcy, a palpable tension crackled. Ward had pushed his team to the limit. Exhaustion hung heavy in the air, a harbinger of the chaos to come. A miscalculation, a breach in containment, a cascade of errors culminating in a catastrophic failure. The alarms blared, a shrill symphony of impending doom. Panic seized the facility as blinding red lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow. The unthinkable had happened. Titan, the creature they had so carefully crafted, had escaped its confines. Panic turned to terror as the creature, disoriented and enraged, rampaged through the facility. Walls crumbled before its brute strength. Security personnel, outmatched and outgunned, could only watch in horror as their world descended into chaos. Titan, a hulking behemoth of muscle and rage, exploded onto the streets of New York. Its escape from the confines of Apex was a spectacle of raw, untamed power. The city, once a symbol of human achievement, became a playground for a creature beyond comprehension. Buildings toppled, reduced to rubble by Titan's devastating strength. Cars were tossed aside like toys, their metal frames contorted beyond recognition. The air crackled with the sounds of destruction, a symphony of shattering glass and crunching concrete. People fled in terror, desperate to escape the wrath of this monstrous creation. The city that never slept was now gripped by a primal fear. As Titan rampaged, Ward watched in horror from the ruined remnants of his facility. The world he had sought to reshape was crumbling around him. The creature he had brought into existence was a testament to his hubris, a living embodiment of his ambition gone awry. He had sought to create life, but had instead unleashed a force of unimaginable destruction. The weight of his actions crashed down upon Dr. Ward. The devastation unfolding outside the shattered windows of his lab was a mirror reflecting his own shattered dreams. He'd aspired to be a creator, a visionary who pushed humanity forward. Instead, he had become a destroyer. the architect of unimaginable suffering. The faces of the fleeing crowds, etched with terror and despair, haunted him. He had betrayed his responsibility as a scientist, his duty to use his knowledge for the betterment of humanity. Now, he was burdened with the knowledge that his creation was responsible for untold suffering. The guilt gnawed at him, a constant reminder of his catastrophic error. But amidst the despair, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. He had unleashed this monster, and he would be the one to stop it. There was still a chance, however slim, to redeem himself. He had to find a way to stop Titan, to atone for the chaos he had wrought. Ward knew that stopping Titan wouldn't be easy. The creature was a force of nature, seemingly impervious to conventional weaponry. But Ward understood its biology, its strengths and weaknesses. He had, after all, designed them. He retreated into the wreckage of his lab, desperately searching for any tools, any knowledge that could help him. His plan was audacious, a long shot. He would use Titan's own biology against it, exploiting the creature's rapid metabolism to deliver a fatal dose of a specially engineered toxin. It was a gamble, a desperate hope clinging to the precipice of oblivion. As Titan raged through the city, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake, Ward followed. He moved through the ruined streets, each step fueled by a potent cocktail of guilt and determination. He would confront his creation face to face and pray that his last-ditch effort wouldn't be in vain. The fate of New York City, his redemption, now rested on a knife's edge.
Dr. Alan Ward was not just a scientist, he was an artist. His canvas was the very fabric of life, DNA. His tools were gene-editing technologies, CRISPR being his favorite.
From his early days at MIT, Ward was hailed as a visionary, a man who could rewrite the language of life. He had a special interest in genetics, fascinated by the potential to enhance and reshape living organisms.
His groundbreaking work on gene therapy had earned him accolades and awards, but his ultimate goal remained elusive. Ward dreamt of creating a new life form, a being that transcended the limitations of nature. He envisioned a creature possessing the strength of a titan and the intelligence of a human, a perfect blend of brute force and strategic cunning.
His ambition knew no bounds, fueled by a relentless pursuit of scientific achievement. Ward believed that humanity had a moral obligation to push the boundaries of science, to explore the uncharted territories of life itself. He argued that such pursuits were not merely acts of scientific curiosity, but necessary steps towards unlocking the true potential of life. Ward's ambitious project, which he codenamed Titan, was shrouded in secrecy. It aimed to combine the DNA of the strongest creatures on Earth with human intelligence. The goal was to create a being of immense strength and strategic thinking, a being that could revolutionize warfare, construction, and even space exploration.
He believed that such a creation could solve some of humanity's biggest challenges, from natural disasters to resource scarcity.
Ward handpicked a team of brilliant, albeit slightly eccentric scientists who shared his audacity and ambition. Their clandestine meetings took place in the depths of his private lab, far from the prying eyes of the scientific community and regulatory bodies.
The Titan project was not without its critics. Ethical concerns were raised, questioning the morality of creating such a powerful life form. Many argued that such a being could pose a significant threat to humanity, fearing the unintended consequences of tampering with the natural order.
The experiment involved a complex interplay of gene splicing, cloning, and artificial womb technology. Ward and his team meticulously selected DNA samples from various species, the sheer muscle mass of the African elephant, the regenerative abilities of the axolotl, the incredible strength-to-weight ratio of the dung beetle.
The human element came from Ward's own genome, a decision driven by his belief in the superiority of his intellect. He believed that his genes, combined with the chosen animal traits, would result in a perfectly balanced being.
The early stages of the experiment were fraught with challenges. Countless trials resulted in grotesque deformities, creatures that lived for mere minutes before succumbing to their own biological inconsistencies.
Yet, Ward remained undeterred. He saw each failure as a stepping stone, a necessary stumble on the path to success. His obsession grew with each passing day, fueled by a potent cocktail of ambition, scientific curiosity, and a touch of hubris. In the cold, sterile lab, the culmination of years of research was about to come to life.
It's alive. I can't believe it. We've done it.
The creature, a marvel of genetic engineering, took its first breath, marking a new era in science. S3, Roar.
Alan, this is madness. We have crossed a line that should never be crossed.
Dr. Raj Patel, a bioethicist, couldn't hide his dismay. The ethical implications were staggering.
We need to consider the consequences of our actions. This isn't just about science anymore.
Dr. Ward's experiment has sparked a global debate. People are divided on whether this is a scientific breakthrough or a dangerous overreach.
The world watched closely as the ramifications of playing God began to unfold.
What will this mean for the future of genetic engineering? Only time will tell.
The lab was sterile, cold. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. My massive form trembled. I didn't understand. Where was I? Why was I here? The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. My eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, darted around frantically. I saw white walls, metal tables, strange machines that beeped and whirred. Fear gripped my heart. I had never known such terror. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. My scales bristled, reflecting the harsh light. I tried to move, but thick restraints held me in place. The more I struggled, the tighter they became. Panic set in. My muscles tensed. My heart raced. I needed to escape. The door to the lab opened. A man in a white coat entered. Dr. Ward. He approached me cautiously. My nostrils flared. I could smell the man's fear. Dr. Ward's hand shook as he reached for a syringe. My eyes followed his every move. The needle glinted in the light. My confusion turned to anger. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be poked and prodded. My mind raced. Memories flashed through my consciousness, fragments of my creation. The pain, the loneliness, and now this sterile prison. My muscles bunched, my tail thrashed. The restraints creaked under the strain. Dr. Ward stepped back, alarm evident on his face. I roared. The sound reverberated through the lab. Glass vials shattered, alarms blared, and in that moment I made a decision. I would be free, no matter the cost.
The restraints snapped like twine. Titan surged upward. Its massive form towered over me. I stumbled backward, my eyes wide with terror.
My tail whipped around. It smashed into a bank of computers. Sparks flew. Alarms blared louder. My powerful legs propelled me forward. I crashed through the lab door. Metal shrieked and bent. Chaos erupted in the hallway. Scientists and security personnel scattered. Their screams echoed off the walls. My confusion grew. The noise, the lights, the unfamiliar smells. I lashed out blindly. My claws raked across the walls, leaving deep gouges in their wake. My tail smashed through windows. Glass rained down. My roars shook the very foundations of the building. I barreled down the corridor. My bulk barely fit. Doors and equipment were crushed beneath my feet. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and rage. I needed to escape, to find open space. I crashed through a set of double doors. I found myself in a large atrium. I paused, my eyes adjusting to the natural light streaming through the skylights. For a moment, everything was still. Then I saw it. Freedom, the glass dome above. With a mighty leap, I propelled myself upward. My scales glinted in the sunlight. Glass shattered. The sound was deafening. I burst through into open air. I unfurled wings I didn't know I had, and with powerful strokes, I took to the sky, leaving behind a facility in ruins and a stunned Dr. Ward staring up at his creation, his greatest achievement and his worst nightmare.
I stood amidst the wreckage. My lab coat was torn. Dust settled around me. The alarms continued to blare, but I barely heard them. My eyes were fixed on the hole in the ceiling, where Titan had disappeared. The enormity of what had just happened hit me like a physical blow. My creation, my life's work, it was loose, and I had no idea what it was capable of. Memories flashed through my mind. The years of research, the late nights, the breakthroughs and setbacks. I'd been so focused on whether I could create Titan, I never stopped to consider if I should. Now, as I surveyed the destruction around me, the full weight of my actions crashed down upon me. What had I done? What kind of monster had I unleashed upon the world? My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I had to alert the authorities. But what could I tell them? How could I explain Titan? The creature was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was powerful, unpredictable, and now it was free. My mind raced. I tried to anticipate Titan's next move. Where would it go? What would it do? The sound of approaching sirens snapped me out of my thoughts. I had to act fast. I had to find a way to contain Titan, to protect the city, to undo the damage I had caused. But as I looked around at the destruction, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I realized that this was only the beginning, that the true horror was yet to come, and that I, Dr. Ward, was responsible for whatever chaos Titan would unleash.
Section 4. Titan enters New York City. Panic ensues. Titan soared over the city skyline. Its massive wings cast shadows on the streets below. At first, people pointed. They stared in awe. But awe quickly turned to terror. Titan's roar echoed between skyscrapers. Windows shattered. Car alarms blared. Panic spread like wildfire. People ran, screaming, desperate to escape the monster in the sky. Traffic ground to a halt, horns honked uselessly, drivers abandoned their vehicles. The streets became a sea of chaos. Titan swooped low, its tail smashed into a billboard. Debris rained down on the fleeing crowds. The creature's confusion grew, the noise, the movement. It was overwhelming. Titan lashed out. Its claws raked across the side of a building. Concrete crumbled, steel bent. Emergency services scrambled to respond. Police cars wailed. Fire trucks raced through the streets, but they were helpless against Titan's onslaught. The creature's scales deflected bullets like raindrops. Water from fire hoses barely fazed it. Titan's rampage continued unchecked. It crashed into a high-rise. Glass and steel exploded outward. The building swayed dangerously. News helicopters circled overhead. Cameras captured the destruction. The world watched in horror as Titan wreaked havoc on New York City. Social media exploded with videos and eyewitness accounts. Theories spread like wildfire. Where had this creature come from? What did it want? As the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow over the smoke-filled sky, one thing became clear. New York City was under siege, and no one knew how to stop it. Section 5. Immediate effects of Titan's presence. The city that never sleeps was brought to its knees. Titan's presence paralyzed New York. Public transportation ground to a halt. Subways were evacuated. Bridges and tunnels closed. The streets, usually bustling with life, were eerily empty. Save for the occasional military vehicle racing by, a state of emergency was declared. The National Guard was called in, but even they seemed powerless against Titan's might. Hospitals were overwhelmed. The injured poured in. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, treating wounds they had never seen before. Burns from Titan's fiery breath, crushing injuries from falling debris. The psychological toll was immense. Panic attacks, shock. The healthcare system strained under the weight of the crisis. And still, Titan rampaged on, seemingly unstoppable. The economic impact was immediate and severe. The stock market plummeted. Trading was halted. Businesses closed indefinitely. The tourism industry, a lifeblood of the city, evaporated overnight. Hotels stood empty. Broadway went dark. The financial district, once the beating heart of the global economy, was a ghost town. The cost of the damage was incalculable, and rising with every passing moment. Fear gripped the nation. Other cities went on high alert. Was New York just the beginning? Would Titan move on to other targets? The government scrambled to formulate a response. Emergency meetings were called. Military options were discussed. But as night fell on the first day of Titan's reign of terror, one question loomed large. How do you stop a creature that seems invincible? As the city held its breath, waiting for dawn, the true extent of the catastrophe was only beginning to unfold.
Dr. Ward sat in a makeshift command center. His eyes were glued to the screens before him. Each one showed a different angle of the destruction. His creation. His fault. The weight of guilt threatened to crush him. He had wanted to push the boundaries of science, to create something extraordinary. Instead, he had brought chaos to millions. The faces of the injured and frightened haunted him. He couldn't look away. The military brass argued around him. Plans were proposed and discarded. Nothing seemed feasible. Dr. Ward knew he had to speak up, to offer what insights he could. But fear held him back. Fear of judgment, of condemnation, of punishment for what he had done. Yet, as he watched Titan tear through another building, he knew he had no choice. He had to try to make this right, even if it meant sacrificing everything. With trembling hands, Dr. Ward stood. He cleared his throat. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. He began to speak, to explain Titan's origins, its potential weaknesses. His voice grew stronger as he talked. For the first time since this nightmare began, he felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps with his knowledge, they could find a way to stop Titan, to end this nightmare. As dawn broke over a battered New York City, a plan began to take shape. It was dangerous, risky, but it was their only hope. Dr. Ward knew he would be at the center of it, that he might not survive. But as he looked at the screens one last time, at the city he had helped destroy, he knew it was a price he was willing to pay. The time for reflection was over. Now it was time for action. To face the monster he had created, and to try, against all odds, to save the city from Titan's reign of terror.
Dr. Ward stood at the window of his lab. His eyes were fixed on the city skyline, but his mind was elsewhere. It was trapped in the past, in a moment of hubris and ambition. The moment that had led to this catastrophe. He closed his eyes. The memories flooded back. The excitement of discovery, the rush of pushing boundaries, and then the horror, the realization of what he had done. He had created something beyond his control, something that now threatened everything. The weight of his guilt was crushing. It pressed down on him like a physical force. Every news report, every siren in the distance, they were constant reminders of his responsibility, of the lives at stake because of his actions. He turned from the window. His lab was a mess of papers and equipment. It was a reflection of his frantic state of mind. But amidst the chaos, a determination was growing. He had made this mess. Now he would fix it, no matter the cost. The city was in a state of constant fear. Titan's presence loomed large, like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. People hurried through the streets, always looking over their shoulders, always ready to run. Buildings stood damaged and abandoned, scars from Titan's rampages. The once bustling financial district was a ghost town. Schools remained closed, parks were empty. The vibrant life of the city had been snuffed out. The military had tried to intervene. Their efforts had been futile. Tanks lay crushed like tin cans. Fighter jets had been swatted from the sky. Titan seemed unstoppable, impervious to conventional weapons. The authorities were at a loss. Evacuation plans were being discussed. But where could millions go? And what about those who couldn't leave? The situation seemed hopeless. Unless someone could find a way to stop Titan. Dr. Ward pored over his notes. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but his mind was sharp, focused. He knew the answer lay in Titan's genetic makeup. After all, he had created it. He remembered the initial experiments, the gene splicing, the attempts to create a super soldier. It had all gone so wrong, but perhaps that knowledge could now save them. If he could understand Titan's physiology, he could control it. The idea came to him in a flash. Sound waves, specific frequencies, they could potentially influence Titan's neural pathways. Calm the beast, maybe even control it. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Ward began to sketch out his plan. A device that could emit these frequencies, something portable yet powerful. He would need help, resources, but first, he needed to prove his concept. Time was running out. Section 4, crafting the prototype. Ward worked tirelessly, day and night blurred together. His lab became his world. He soldered circuits, programmed microchips, and built speaker arrays. Each component was a step closer to salvation. The prototype took shape. It was ugly, a mess of wires and metal. But Ward saw beauty in it, the beauty of hope, of potential redemption. He ran simulation after simulation, tweaking, adjusting, perfecting. There were setbacks, failures, moments of despair, but Ward pushed through. He couldn't afford to give up. The city couldn't afford it. With each passing day, the danger grew. Titan's attacks became more frequent, more destructive. Finally, after weeks of work, it was ready. The prototype sat on his workbench, humming with potential. Ward looked at it with a mixture of pride and trepidation. Would it work? There was only one way to find out. Section 5, genetic frequencies, the key to control. The science behind the device was complex, but its principle was simple. Titan's genetic makeup was unique, a result of Ward's experiments. This meant its neural pathways were unlike any natural creatures. Ward had identified specific frequencies, ones that resonated with Titan's brain structure. In theory, these frequencies could influence Titan's mood, its aggression levels, even its basic motor functions. It was like a remote control for a giant destructive robot. The device emitted a cocktail of sounds, some audible, some not. Each played a role. Some targeted the amygdala to reduce aggression, others aimed at the motor cortex to impair movement. It was a symphony of control, conducted by science, but would it work in practice? Lab simulations were one thing, facing a rampaging Titan was another. Ward knew the risks. The device's range was limited. He would need to get close, very close. The thought terrified him, but he had no choice. Section 6, a glimmer of hope. As dawn broke, Ward prepared himself. He looked at the device in his hands, so small yet carrying the hopes of an entire city. He took a deep breath. This was his moment of truth, his chance for redemption. The streets were eerily quiet as he made his way downtown. In the distance, he could hear it. The thunderous footsteps, the roars. Titan was coming. Ward's heart raced. His palms were sweaty, but his resolve was firm. He found a vantage point, a rooftop with a clear view. He could see Titan now, massive, terrifying, destroying everything in its path. Ward's fingers hovered over the device's controls. It was now or never. He activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Ward's heart sank, but then he saw it. Titan paused. Its rampage halted. It seemed confused, disoriented. Ward allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time in months there was hope. Hope for the city, hope for redemption, hope for a future. The piercing wail of sirens sliced through the night. I jolted upright, heart pounding. Not a drill. This was different. My phone buzzed, the screen flashing red. Titan. The name sent a chill down my spine. I knew this day would come. The day the creature, the stuff of nightmares, became reality. My years of research, a desperate attempt to be ready. Was it enough? No time to hesitate. Lives were at stake. I had to act. I raced towards the emergency command center, adrenaline surging. The streets, normally bustling, were eerily deserted, except for them, the brave few running towards danger, not away from it. First responders, their faces grim but resolute. Military personnel armed and ready, their training kicking in. We were a team now, united against a common enemy. A formidable force, yet a tiny speck against the colossal threat that awaited us. But we had hope. Hope fueled by courage, by duty, by the will to survive. The city, once a symbol of human achievement, was now a terrifying obstacle course. Buildings crumbled under Titan's devastating footsteps. Debris littered the streets, each step a calculated risk. The air was thick with dust and the stench of fear. But we pressed on, our determination unwavering. Every fallen comrade fueled our resolve. We had to reach the evacuation point, had to get as many people to safety as possible. Time was running out. Section 4, first contact. Then they saw it, or rather felt it. The ground trembled, a tremor that resonated deep within their bones. A deafening roar, primal and terrifying, ripped through the air. Titan, a monstrous silhouette against the crimson sky, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Fear threatened to consume them, but Ward held their gaze. This was their moment, the culmination of all their preparation. He wouldn't let fear paralyze them. They had a job to do. Section 5, Clash of Titans. The first encounter was chaos, a whirlwind of fire, steel, and raw power. Missiles exploded against Titan's thick hide, buying them precious seconds. Ward, armed with his knowledge, directed the team, exploiting every weakness he had anticipated. But Titan was a force of nature, its rage unrelenting. Each step forward, a victory hard won. They were outmatched, outgunned, yet their spirit remained unbroken. They were humanity's shield, standing against the storm. Section 6, Uncertain Outcome. The battle raged on, a desperate dance between hope and despair. Every fallen comrade fueled their resolve, every near miss a reminder of the stakes. They fought with the courage of desperation, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. As the dust settled, the outcome remained uncertain. Titan, though wounded, was far from defeated. The city lay in ruins, a testament to the creature's devastating power. Ward, surveying the scene, felt a surge of both dread and determination. The fight was far from over.
I'm sure you've heard the news. A colossal menace is tearing through the city and all hope seems lost. Titan, a monstrous force of nature, is wreaking havoc. Skyscrapers crumble and the military is outmatched. But in the midst of this chaos stands Ward. With grit and determination, he charges through the destruction, holding a device that could be the city's last hope. He dodges falling debris and relentless attacks, getting closer and closer to Titan. The moment of truth arrives. Ward activates the device, releasing a mysterious frequency. At first, nothing happens. Desperation kicks in, and Ward frantically tweaks the settings. Suddenly, Titan begins to calm. The monstrous roars soften and the rampage slows. Ward's ingenuity pays off, and the city breathes a collective sigh of relief. One man, one device, and a heartbeat of hope. Ward saved the city, proving that even in the darkest times, a spark of heroism can light the way.